let's jump right into it with the running backs. And this is the more high profile guys, or the ADPs a little bit higher here. Jahmyr Gibbs here, Denny. When you look at this backfield where there was so much expected of him in his rookie season, and it felt like the second half, we saw some major flashes, but David Montgomery's still here, obviously a red zone monster. This offense has plenty of continuity. They do use both backs. Can Gibbs return first-round value in a shared backfield?
I think he can, and I'm not totally opposed to drafting him at ADP. I don't think that he has that sort of insane upside that you would get if he had the entire backfield to himself. Now, this is a Lions team that last year was quietly very run heavy, especially when they had the lead. They had a lot of positive game script on their side. They really took the air out of the football in those situations. I think that means that both Gibbs and Montgomery can get there for fantasy purposes. If things go right for the Lions this year, I could see both of them, being, I don't know, top 12, top 15 running backs. We've seen it before on good teams. Okay. And I think the Lions are a good team. It's weird to say, still getting adjusted to that. But we, like I said, we talked with a Detroit beat writer on the Roto World Football Show, and he said, look, Montgomery's not going anywhere. Dan Campbell loves this guy. He's still going to be used a lot, especially in short yardage and goal line situations.
Lawrence, the good news is for Gibbs, even though Montgomery's, like Denny just said, like he's going to get the touches, he's going to get plenty of goal line touches as well. Last year, when Gibbs got more than 12 touches, he averaged more than 18 points a game. So this is a guy, when he gets a normal workload, that's not that crazy. That's just sneaking into double-digit touches. This is a guy that makes the most of them.
Yeah, and the good thing is, Connor and Danny, we got a chance to see how he could flourish as a guy in a two-man backfield, and we got to see him do his thing on occasion when David Montgomery missed. Last year, Jahmyr Gibbs, my running back 7, finished as running back 8 in points per game last year with David Montgomery. So I think when we look at it from that perspective, whatever he did last year is like, that's the, as they say, the floor, right? GM Brad Holmes said a few months ago, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a bigger role. And despite all that, he still just fell about 55 yards shy of 1,000 yards. So, yes, he's worth the first-round value. And think of it like this, too, fellas. Like, how many running backs are owning their backfield outright? CMC, Breece Hall, we presume Bijan Robinson. And that's
Maybe.
Right. And that's why I say presume, right? And that's why they're getting drafted when we're getting drafted. Then you got Jonathan Taylor, maybe Saquon Barkley's in there. And then you get to the best guy who's not sharing his backfield, who is sharing the backfield. And that's undoubtedly Jahmyr Gibbs at this point. So if there's only so many bats that could go in the first round, you're looking at that 1-2 turn. Like, I better get this guy because I'm not going to get him on the way back.
I will say toward the end of the season, guys, Gibbs started to separate himself from Montgomery in the pass game. He started to run more routes, see more targets. And, so if you're in a PPR or even a half PPR format, that makes a huge difference.
Speaking of shared backfields, much like the Lions, the Dolphins have a shared backfield that is very successful throughout. It's not just one guy eats all the time, but one guy that was so productive and explosive with the touches he got was Achane. And during the rookie season, 7.8 yards per carry, almost unheard of. 21% of his rushes went for 10+ yards here, Lawrence. Now, you got to throw in the fact that he got banged up, which was always the concerns at his side. Of course, at his size, this is a backfield that has two other intriguing players, with Mostert, who had a phenomenal season. Now, Jalen Wright, who they traded up for into the third round to go get and is explosive in his own way. What kind of regression can we expect from Achane? Because the reality is the rate he was at per touch last year is just unsustainable in any format. Doesn't mean he can't have a great season, though.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to average, around 8 yards a carry again.
Almost a first down per carry.
Right. That's crazy. But at the same time, he is that type of player. Like, Devon Achane can average up towards 6 yards a carry. Like, he's that type of dude, and he's gonna need that, especially when you see he only had 3 games last season with more than 12 touches. Like, that's why they have him. right? That's why they got him in that offense. And the good thing about Devon Achane, it's not when you don't get to the goal line and take him out. Miami's using every running back at the goal line. It just happened to be much more of Raheem Mostert in that fashion, as we saw him with his 18 rushing touchdowns last year. And again, just like David Montgomery, Raheem Mostert's not going anywhere. In fact, it's like he turned 30 years old and is now having career years every year now. So as long as he's in that offense there, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane is going to have to share a little something, but you can count on those explosive runs. Like Connor, you noticed, you watched them at Texas A&M. He did it then, and we're like, oh, this is the NFL. As soon as he get in that game, and I think it was the Broncos game where we really saw like, oh, this dude is really like that. So best ball drafters are gonna love him. In redraft, it'll be tough, but if you bought in and he's your RB2, it's a solid pickup.
Denny, for me, when I look at Achane, it feels like he has his own role in this offense while they drafted Wright as Mostert insurance. Was that something you would agree with? Because it feels like as great as Mostert was last year, especially at his age, like Lawrence indicated, this guy's got a laundry list of injuries throughout his career. So it gave them some insurance for him with Wright. While there's no replacing what Achane brings to the offense.
You're right, and I do think that Jalen Wright, he was drafted probably to take the Mostert spot in that Miami offense, but because I struggle to take Achane at that ADP. That's a lofty ADP. Right. I mean, that basically is predicated on this guy having a much bigger role both in the running game and in the passing game. And I think this Dolphins team, which lost a lot of defensive talent in the offseason, didn't really replace much of it. I think that they will not be in the position to really establish it and have run heavy offenses throughout this season like they did last season. When they had the lead, the Dolphins were among the run heaviest teams in the league last year. I don't see that happening this year. I think that the Dolphins will be more pass heavy than we think. If Achane can take over that pass game role, then yeah, I think he can get there. In best ball formats, love Achane. Okay, I can't get enough. I'm telling you, though, it's going to be frustrating with this guy in redraft. You're going to plug him in, and sometimes he's going to win the week for you, and that's cool. And you know, honestly, like I can't tell people not to do that, not to pick the player who can single-handedly win your week. But there are going to be frustrating weeks. I mean, Mostert's not going anywhere, barring injury.
So now we kind of pivot here, Denny, to a backfield that it looks like they have the guy, especially when you look at the money that they handed him, especially in the 1 year vacuum with the Packers and Josh Jacobs. Now, somehow, some way, not only is A.J. Dillon back with this team, he has 3 straight seasons with 200-plus touches. But on the flip side of it, this is a team that looked for a little bit more from their backup running back by drafting Marshawn Lloyd at a USC. But with those two guys behind him, I mean, are they just going to heavily lean on Josh Jacobs like we've seen the Raiders do with him in the past?
Yeah, you know, on the Roto World Football Show, we spoke with the Packers beat writer who said, look, they don't overthink this, guys, you know, because I'm overthinking the Josh Jacobs thing big time this summer. And he said, don't overthink this. They brought him in to be the lead back, and the lead back includes pass route running role and pass catching and goal line work. So I do think that he will get a shot at that. Now, does it concern me that Josh Jacobs was, per the metrics, one of the worst running backs in the NFL last year? It does. It concerns me a little bit, and it makes me interested in Lloyd. Although I will say that A.J. Dillon, best shape of his life. Okay, this is what we're hearing out of Packers camp. Best shape of his life, and it could be in line for RB2 duties. I know no one wants to hear that. No one. I don't want to hear that. You guys don't want to, but it could be the reality. So I am taking Lloyd as a hedge on if Jacobs is really struggling. But Dillon, again, is just going to be annoying. He's going to be there. He's going to take on a lot of that early down role, I think.
Yeah, Lawrence, how do you see this one shaking out?
Yeah, I mean, for years that when Aaron Jones was there, we'd always say like free Aaron Jones, you know, A.J. Dillon would come in there. I don't see it being any type of different situation than that, right? We knew Aaron Jones was the lead back, but we knew A.J. Dillon was a guy who was going to come in there, take some carries away from him. A.J. Dillon could catch the ball out of the backfield too, to be honest. He ain't just some big, slow dude who be stumping through there like Frankenstein. Like, dude, he got he got good feet, and he's there literally to take the touches from Josh Jacobs. But Josh Jacobs will, like Denny said, they said it'll be the lead guy, and that's just how I'm viewing it right now. I'm still thinking, like, what happened with Aaron Jones? Like, what made him want to make that switch? Was it like Josh Jacobs being a couple years younger? Because Aaron Jones looked like a beast in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. All right, Josh Jacobs is cool. Like Denny said, Josh Jacobs wasn't as efficient, 50th amongst qualified running backs and points per touch. That's kind of scary, but it's a good offense, though. You got Jordan Love running that offense. So I do think Josh Jacobs will get better opportunities than what he had as a Las Vegas Raiders. So you have to like that portion of it. So it's like a little give and take. Like, you get more touches on the Raiders, you get better opportunities, better offense, better quarterback play with the Packers.
And you're right, Lawrence, in that you have to consider the offensive environment for Josh Jacobs last year in Vegas. It was atrocious. I mean, no one could survive that. Even Devontae Adams couldn't survive that fantasy-wise for a lot of the season, until they really started force-feeding him targets near the end. But so Jacobs was in the worst possible spot last year. Now he's in an ascendant offense with Jordan Love at quarterback, with a lot of receivers that are scaring defenses. So that should make a difference. I didn't mean to suggest that he's like done. He's not even that old,
right?
Even though it feels like he's been in the league for 15
years. We should point out real quickly that while he did sign on the surface a 4-year deal for $48 million, essentially that's a 1-year deal with $12.5 million of that guaranteed. So when you see the big 4 and the big 48, don't see it as they're committing to him for the next half decade. He's got $12.5 million guaranteed, and that's pretty much what the going rate is for a top running back per year right now.
Yeah, they could simply run him into the ground. I think that's what that contract tells you right there. So, guys, a player that we don't have any volume questions with, which is always one of the toughest in fantasy with backfields, is Rachaad White on the Bucs. I mean, this was a volume king last year. One of 2 running backs last season with 250 rush attempts and 60 receptions. Now, I'll say this, Lawrence, Dave Canales left to go be the head coach of the Panthers, so the play calling will be a little bit different. But at the end of the day, can Rachaad White simply volume his way into another top 10 finish?
Yeah. If they're gonna force it like that, I don't see how you can't. He averaged under 4 yards per carry, but was a top 10 running back in points per game basis, RB10 to be exact. They draft Bucky Irvin to come in there, who's got a similar skill set to Rachaad White. I would say Bucky Irvin runs a little tougher than he does. Neither guy is a breakaway speed type of running back there. So a lot of it's tough. Like, he had a lot of dump offs and screens, and it's like, can you replicate that? And that's, again, like you said, Connor, can that be replicated with Dave Canales gone? We'll have to see. But I would say to that is, who's there to really threaten that? Like, if Bucky Irvin ends up as the backup running back, are they really going to split time with Bucky Irvin as rookie? I don't see that happening, especially like it wasn't like Rachaad White wasn't reliable. He wasn't fumbling everywhere and stuff like that. So I think in fantasy football, volume is king. And so, yeah, I think he can.
I do think that the hesitation on whether White can hang on to that workload is kind of reflected in his redraft ADP. He's going RB 14, 15 in PPR formats. Look, drafters are really savvy. It's something I've noticed over the past 5 years. Like the average fantasy football drafter knows what they're doing to an extent that is almost frightening. And they know that Rachaad White got away with it last year, largely based on volume. Not a good rusher, not even really a great pass catcher, but saw a ton of carries. No one threatened his workload. He led the entire NFL in running back pass routes. Okay. Like, those are treasure troves of fantasy points for us. Right. Am I going to chase that? I don't think so. I don't think so, because I think that the likelihood is they're going to try to split up the backfield a little bit. But again, you're talking about RB15. It's not going to kill you if you take him there and he ends up as the RB13 or 14, somewhere in there.
Yeah, guys, Rachaad White, 860 snaps last year is just insane for any kind of running back. And, as much as, we have to know that they drafted Bucky Irving in the 4th round, Bucky Irving is 192 pounds. That's a bottom percentile weight. So you might see him more in certain packages and looks, third downs at absolute best. But I think the opportunity for White to volume his way in, it's not pretty. You don't have to love it, but you might have to respect it in fantasy this year, as Denny said, with where his ADP is at. All right, one more high end in terms of where the cost of getting this running back. James Cook, guys. I mean, Denny, simply, how high is the ceiling for James Cook? Let's take out goal line work, right? I mean, 4 rushing touchdowns on 326 career carries. Now, Stephon Diggs is out of this offense. Obviously, Josh Allen is a guy that gets touchdown equity in his own right. But it feels like just as a pure receiving back on top of the rushing volume, James Cook has a massive, massive ceiling going into this year where there's a lot of question marks on the offense, and he's not one of them.
No, and apparently, he's drawing rave reviews from beat writers and coaches in training camp. I'm good with taking him in certain, depending on how you want to make your fantasy team. I think that he's a nice running back to grab based on volume. But I will say that the touchdown drought is going to continue until morale improves for James Cook. Last year, Josh Allen was the Bills' main goal line threat. 21 rushes for Josh Allen inside the 10-yard line. James Cook was second on the team with 18, but more importantly, Josh Allen led the team with 14 rushing attempts inside the 5-yard line and scored 8 times on those carries. Cook had only 4 carries inside the 5. That's not changing. Like the Bills want Josh Allen to be Josh Allen. He's basically unstoppable, from the shotgun inside the 5-yard line. Like nobody's stopping him there. So if you're taking Cook, you're hoping for PPR production. You're hoping for the pass catching stuff. I would struggle to see him scoring more than, I don't know, a handful of touchdowns on the ground this year.
I like drafting James Cook, and for those who are on the fence about it, this is how I would say approach that situation. If you're early, you get a guy like a Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. Hopefully you draft in a spot where you get McCaffrey. If you get even a, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, you get one of those guys, right? Then you stack yourself with some receivers like the next couple rounds. Having James Cook as your RB2 in that fashion isn't a bad idea, because think of it. You've already, he can't do much worse in the touchdown department, but you're still getting inside of a top 20 fantasy running back. And if you're getting that type of production from your second running back, when you got an elite guy, top 5 running back as the other running back, then you're in a pretty good spot, because now you got 2 solid receivers. You got a top tier running back, and now you got James Cook. And like y'all was talking about, his receiving, what he's going to bring in the receiving game, that's what's going to get you there. So you could go into your weeks thinking, James Cook, he ain't getting a touchdown, but he going to get these receptions. Right. He's going to run it, from 20 to 20, let Josh Allen do his thing, and you'll be all right.
I will say that looking at the ADPs, it looks like it comes down to a choice between Rachaad White and James Cook, and I lean Cook pretty easily there. I think he's the better running back. He makes he can do a lot with a little in this offense.
Yeah, and an offense that even with Diggs out the door, they have Josh Allen at quarterback. It's going to be an offense that is going to be productive.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.